Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands. Okay, Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. Let's set the scene. Forget the usual airport chaos for just a second, the buzz before a big holiday.
Right.
Instead, picture the seemingly ordinary moment at Portland International Airport. There's a Boeing 727 Flight 305 just getting ready for a quick hop over to Seattle.
Just a 30-minute flight, really routine stuff.
Exactly. Nothing about it screams that, everything's about to change completely.
And that specific plane, the 727, it had a feature that was, well, just part of its design back then.
Yeah.
But it becomes absolutely central to this whole mystery.
The rear stairway.
The rear stairway. Think about that. A commercial jet with its own built-in stairs at the back, almost like an escape hatch.
Wild. So among the last passengers to board is this guy. Looks maybe mid-40s. Dark suit, black raincoat over his arm, even a clip-on tie. Tidy.
Carries a briefcase, a simple paper bag. Nothing remarkable.
At the counter, he gives the name Dan Cooper, which of course later gets misreported, right?
Yeah, a reporter's slip turns him into the legendary D.B. Cooper. But that afternoon, he's just Dan Cooper.
Yeah.
Another guy getting on a plane, finds his seat, 18E, window seat, towards the back.
And what he does first, totally unremarkable, orders a drink from the flight attendant.
A bourbon and soda, specifically.
Lights a cigarette, you could do that then, obviously settles in. Just another business traveler.
And it's that very normalcy, that complete lack of anything standing out, that makes what happens next so chilling, really. It's like he was invisible until he chose not to be.
Okay, so the plane takes off. 3:02 p.m. Skies are kind of overcast, but calm enough. Routine flight. Then maybe 13 minutes in, around 3:15, the guy in 18E Cooper, he does something. He hands a folded note to Florence Schaffner, one of the flight attendants.
And her first thought, understandably, is probably just, maybe he's flirting, giving her his number.
Right, common enough maybe. She just pops it in her purse, figures she'll read it later.
But he doesn't let it go. He leans in a bit. His voice is calm, polite even, no aggression.
And says what?
He says, "Miss, I think you'd better read that note. I have a bomb."
Just like that, calmly.
Just like that. Imagine hearing those words, delivered so, matter-of-factly. In that instant, her world, everyone's world on that plane, just flips upside down. The ordinary flight is suddenly terrifying.
And the note, what did it actually say?
Stark. Printed in block capitals, basically. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit next to me."
So she sits down.
Immediately. Then he opens the briefcase just a crack, enough for her to see inside.
And she sees.
Red cylinders, wires, something that looked like a battery pack. Now, was it real? Or a very convincing fake? In that moment, it didn't matter.
No, the threat felt absolutely real. That's all that counts.
Absolutely. And the perception of danger was total.
What gets me is the contrast you mentioned. The extreme threat, a bomb on a plane, versus his almost polite manner.
It's deeply unsettling, isn't it? That calmness, that control becomes this recurring theme. It suggests someone incredibly focused, or maybe just utterly detached from the situation's gravity.
So, still calm, he starts laying out his demands through Florence, right? She relays them to the cockpit.
Yes. $200,000 cash.
Big money back then.
Huge money. And specific instructions. Unmarked bills.
Okay, what else?
4 parachutes. And he was specific, again, 2 front-mounted, 2 back-mounted packs.
4. That's always struck me as odd. Why 4?
It's a major point of speculation, the front and back pack request. Maybe to make sure they weren't sabotaged, giving him options. Or maybe he thought someone else might jump, though that seems less likely.
Yeah.
And he also wanted
A refueling truck standing by in Seattle when they landed. And a very clear warning. No funny business.
He knew they'd call the authorities. He's anticipating the response.
Yeah, exactly. The specificity suggests planning. The warning suggests an awareness of law enforcement tactics. This wasn't improvised.
Meanwhile, the message goes from the cockpit to air traffic control, then boom, the FBI is involved.
All while most passengers have no idea. They think they're just flying to Seattle.
And Cooper, what's he doing? Sipping his bourbon and soda. He even asks for a second one, just watching it all unfold, seemingly unfazed, like he's directing a movie, not in the middle of a hijacking.
You have to give credit to the flight crew, too, keeping things contained.
Absolutely. Their professionalism under that kind of pressure was incredible, preventing panic, relaying info. Critical.
So eventually, Flight 305 is circling Seattle-Tacoma. It's 5:24 p.m., dark now, raining, streaks on the windows.
And down below, it's controlled chaos. Law enforcement scrambling, banks being contacted for the cash, specifically those untraceable used bills, parachutes being rounded up from local skydiving clubs.
And Cooper's just watching this from 18E, calmly observing the activity on the tarmac.
Seems so. Circling up there gave this almost strategic view. He seemed in control, anticipating the steps, not just reacting, like he'd mentally rehearsed it.
Okay, demands met. Money arrives, parachutes arrive, the plane lands. What happens then?
He releases all 35 passengers, unharmed. That's really significant.
Yeah, no violence towards the passengers at all.
Right. It distinguishes this from a lot of other hijackings. Suggests his goal was purely financial, not causing mass harm, even though the bomb threat was his leverage.
So, passengers off. Who's left?
Just the core flight crew. Pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and one flight attendant, Tina McLeod. She'd become his main point of contact.
He's got the money, the parachutes, now what?
Now he gives his next instructions. Take off again.
Take off again, where to?
His new flight plan was just as specific and, frankly, bizarre. Fly towards Mexico City. But, and this is key, fly low, only 10,000 feet.
Okay.
Landing gear down, rear air stair door unlocked, cabin unpressurized, and fly slow, deliberately slow airspeed.
Whoa! That's a very particular set of instructions.
Extremely particular, and each element seems calculated for his escape.
So 7:40 p.m., the 727 takes off again, configured exactly like that, back into the storm.
Flying low makes radar tracking way harder. Slow speed, gear down also helps reduce the radar signature and critically makes a jump potentially survivable.
And they unlocked rear stairs.
That was the whole point. The key to his exit strategy. It was all designed for what came next.
Which happens when?
There's this crucial window, really narrow, just about 13 minutes. Between 8:00 and 8:13 p.m., they're somewhere over the dark, rugged forests of southern Washington.
And then?
A warning light flashes in the cockpit. Aft stairs activated. The pilots feel it too, a slight shift in air pressure in the cabin, then a momentary thump.
Like something leaving the plane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They try the intercom to the cabin to Cooper.
And?
Silence. No response. That's the last interaction, if you can call it that.
Wow, just gone.
That lack of response, combined with the physical signs, the light, the pressure change, the thump, it's powerful circumstantial evidence.
Yep.
He exited the aircraft right then. A silent confirmation.
So when the plane finally lands, this time in Reno, Nevada, around 10:11 p.m.
The cabin's empty. D.B. Cooper is gone, vanished into the storm, into the night, leaving behind just this incredible mystery.
The sheer nerve of it, jumping from a jetliner at night in a storm over terrain like that.
It's almost unbelievable. An act of incredible risk. That's why it grabbed the public imagination and just hasn't let go. It pushed the boundaries of what seemed possible.
And as you said, this wasn't like other hijackings back then. His approach was so precise, almost surgical.
Clinical is a good word. No violence, just that calm threat and these very specific, almost technical demands. It screams pre-planning.
Yeah.
Maybe even some kind of expertise.
Yeah, compared to the often chaotic, sometimes politically motivated hijackings of that era, Cooper was different. Singular focus on the money, meticulous planning, calm execution. A real outlier.
He even seemed to know things about the plane, the 727, asking if the aft stairs could actually be used in flight, asking about the distance to Reno.
Right. And insisting on flying low, which we now figure was about avoiding radar and making the jump survivable. That was an impulse. That was a thought-out strategy.
And you keep coming back to the eyewitness accounts, especially Tina McLeod's. Her description of his constant, unnerving calm, his total control, it paints this picture of extreme focus, almost detachment. It's one of the most baffling parts.
So they land in Reno. The FBI is waiting, obviously. They swarm the plane. What do they find? Anything useful?
They search his seat, 18E, meticulously. What they find seems almost trivial at first glance.
Like what?
A simple clip-on tie with a tiny mother-of-pearl tack, 8 cigarette butts Raleigh brand, a glass, half empty, that held the bourbon and soda.
And didn't he leave some notes?
He did, some handwritten notes, but frustratingly, those were apparently lost or mishandled early on, never properly analyzed. A huge missed opportunity, potentially.
Wow, so just the tie, the cigarette butts, the glass.
Pretty much. Those small items became the focus. The tie, especially, would gain significance later with better forensics. But back then, not much to go on.
And then the search begins on the ground, right? Where they thought he might have landed.
Oh, yeah. One of the biggest, most expensive searches the FBI ever mounted. Hundreds of agents, deputies, National Guard, volunteers. They combed that rugged area near the Lewis River in southwest Washington. That was the calculated probable drop zone.
But the terrain there is brutal, isn't it?
Incredibly difficult. Dense, old-growth forest, steep rocky ridges, deep ravines often filled with water. Add winter weather setting in, bad visibility. The odds were stacked against them finding anything.
And did they find anything?
Nothing. Despite all that effort, all those resources, not a single definitive trace of D.B. Cooper. No body, no parachute, no footprints they could link to him. And none of the ransom money turned up right away.
Which leaves you with, what, 2 possibilities?
Pretty much. Either the wilderness just completely swallowed him, hid any trace of his fate, or he pulled off a perfect vanishing act, left absolutely nothing behind.
That fundamental question, did he die or did he escape? That's the core of it, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Both options seem almost equally improbable in their own ways. Did the forest keep his secret, or did he just disappear? It fuels the debate even now.
The FBI did narrow down the likely drop zone, right? Near Ariel, Washington.
They did, through careful flight path reconstruction. But even within that zone, the experts couldn't agree on survivability.
What were the arguments?
Well, you had experienced paratroopers saying, no way. Jumping at night, in that weather, with that specific, maybe older parachute rig, into unknown, dense forest. Suicidal.
Okay, makes sense.
But then you had others, sometimes with military backgrounds, pointing to Cooper's specific demands. The chute types, the low altitude, the slow speed. They argued that suggested knowledge, maybe even specialized training, that maybe, just maybe, he could have pulled it off.
So experts divided. The central question just hangs there. Survived or perished?
Exactly. Did he make it out of that black sky, or is he still part of that wilderness? The ultimate unanswered question.
And the official investigation in Narjack, it ran for ages, right?
It did. Opened the day after Thanksgiving '71 and stayed active for over 4 decades. One of the longest, most frustrating cases in FBI history.
What made it so tough from the start?
Well, think about 1971, airport security. Basically non-existent compared to today. You could board easily, paying cash for a ticket, totally normal. Left no paper trail or digital trail, obviously.
And he used an alias, Dan Cooper.
Right. No real name, no digital footprint, no phone records tied to him, and crucially, no usable fingerprints recovered from the plane initially. It was like chasing a ghost from day one.
They must have looked at a lot of people.
Oh, thousands. The FBI said they investigated over 800 potential suspects just in the first 5 years. Tips, leads, hoaxes. They checked everything out. Backgrounds, connections.
Nothing.
Nothing. Not one person could be definitively pinned as Dan Cooper. Despite all that effort, he remained an enigma. A ghost in the system, like you said.
But they had descriptions, right, from the crew, the passengers.
Remarkably consistent descriptions, actually. That's one of the few solid things they had.
Remind us.
White male, mid-40s, around 5'10" to 6 feet tall, 170, 180 pounds. Olive or maybe tan complexion. Quiet, polite, well-spoken.
The suit, the tie.
Dark business suit, white shirt, that black clip-on tie. Sunglasses for a bit. No noticeable accent. And again, no visible nerves, despite, hijacking a plane.
Yeah.
It paints a picture, but a frustratingly generic one in some ways. The details have Raleigh, cigarettes, bourbon, and soda, using correct aviation terms.
Suggest some familiarity, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe he just did his homework really well.
Yeah.
Theories popped up immediately. Ex-military paratrooper, pilot, disgruntled airline employee.
But nobody recognized the sketch. Nobody came forward.
Nope. Composite sketches were everywhere. Wanted posters. Silence. It really was like he just materialized for the hijacking and then, poof,
It
vanished.
just adds to that ghost feeling. He moved through the world without leaving a mark anyone could identify.
Seems like a deliberate effort to be anonymous, to be unseen.
There were some early leads that seemed promising, though, weren't there?
Oh, sure. Always are in big cases. Flickers of hope that ultimately fizzled out.
Like who?
There was talk of a former Green Beret who'd vanished. An airline worker from Oregon with a murky past. Some guy found in Mexico with burn scars. Very speculative stuff.
And wasn't there something about a comic book?
Yeah, a brief, slightly strange detour. A French-language comic book featured a character, an Air Force pilot, named Dan Cooper. Led to some brief speculation about a French or Canadian connection.
But none of it panned out.
No. Every lead, every promising avenue eventually hit a dead end. Coincidence, bad info, misinterpretation. It always led back to that same frustrating void. Cooper's identity, his fate, just stayed hidden.
But the story itself didn't stay hidden. By 1972, less than a year later, he wasn't just a hijacker anymore.
No, he was becoming a legend, a national phenomenon. His stories started appearing everywhere: books, comics, songs. The name D.B. Cooper became shorthand for daring, for mystery.
It's weird how that happens, how a criminal act transforms.
It's a fascinating bit of sociology. He somehow became this folk hero figure, almost a modern Robin Hood in some people's eyes. The guy who stuck it to the government, took the money, and got away clean.
Even admired, maybe, for the audacity.
Absolutely. Tapped into some kind of anti-establishment vibe, maybe. The guy who beat the system, even though, it was a serious crime.
And the question everyone kept asking, the heart of the legend.
Where is Cooper? Where did he go? That became the enduring refrain.
Over the years, some specific names did surface as serious suspects, right?
Yes, several individuals became focal points for investigation and public speculation. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. was a big one early on.
Because he did something similar.
Eerily similar. In April '72, hijacked a 727, demanded money, parachuted out. The parallels were undeniable at first.
But it wasn't him.
No. McCoy was younger than the Cooper descriptions. Eyewitnesses who saw both hijackers said they were different people. McCoy seemed more agitated, less calm than Cooper was described. Plus, McCoy had an alibi for the Cooper hijacking date. He was caught for his own crime later and died in a shootout, so ruled out.
Okay. Who else? There was a deathbed confession, wasn't there?
Dwayne Weber. In 1995, his wife Jo said that just before he died, he whispered, "I'm Dan Cooper."
Wow. Did anything back that up?
Some circumstantial things turned up. An old Northwest Orient ticket stub, some notes in block capitals like the ransom note. His past was a bit shady, used aliases, intriguing stuff.
But
The physical evidence didn't match. The FBI tested fingerprints and DNA against samples from the plane. No match. So, despite his wife's absolute certainty, the forensic link just wasn't there.
then there was L.D. Cooper. Based on his niece's story.
Right, Marla Cooper. She came forward relatively recently, recalling memories from when she was a child. Her uncle L.D. came back from a trip around Thanksgiving '71, injured, acting strange. He had some paratrooper background, maybe an interest in planes.
Did he fit the description?
Some aspects, yes, and her story was compelling. Again, the science. A DNA sample submitted from the family did not match the partial profile developed from the tie Cooper left behind.
So another dead end, forensically speaking, though the suspicion lingers for some.
It does. And it highlights how powerful these personal stories are in a case with so few hard facts. But ultimately, we have to face the strong possibility that Cooper was just someone nobody knew, someone completely off law enforcement's radar who planned it, did it, and vanished. Could have been anyone.
And the FBI eventually just stopped looking.
Officially, yes. In 2016, they closed the active investigation. After 45 years, they concluded they'd run down every credible lead, poured enormous resources into it, and just weren't likely to solve it with the evidence available.
But you get the sense it's not really over, not in people's minds.
Not at all. For the agents who worked it, for the public, the story feels unfinished. The mystery endures.
And part of that enduring story involves letters, right? Letters claiming to be from him.
Yeah, of the strange layer. Soon after the hijacking, these anonymous D.B. Cooper letters started showing up, typed, usually postmarked, from all over, all claiming to be him.
Were any of them believable?
Some contained details that weren't widely public knowledge at the time, which made investigators look closely. But none ever provided verifiable proof. No fingerprints, no secret info, only Cooper would know. The FBI analyzed the promising ones, but nothing definitive.
So, likely hoaxes, or just adding to the confusion?
Probably a mix of both. Hoaxes from people wanting attention, maybe even some misleading stuff. But they definitely helped build the myth. They painted this picture of Cooper being out there, taunting everyone, enjoying his escape.
He really did become more than just a criminal, didn't he? More like a symbol.
A potent cultural archetype, absolutely. Defiance, escape, the perfect getaway. He got romanticized as this gentleman thief, almost. Non-violent, clever, vanished without a trace.
Even though, as you said, it was a serious crime with real fear involved.
Exactly. The reality was a hijacking under threat of a bomb. But because nobody got physically hurt and because he just disappeared, that romantic image took root. The lack of resolution allowed the legend to grow.
And then almost 10 years later, something actually did turn up, something concrete.
Completely unexpected. February 10, 1980. Near Vancouver, Washington, along the Columbia River, a place called Tina Bar.
What happened?
An 8-year-old boy, Brian Ingram, was digging in the sand during a family picnic. Looking for firewood, actually.
He finds
Money. 3 bundles of cash buried just under the surface, waterlogged, kind of fallen apart, but still bundled with rubber bands.
No way.
His dad realized this might be significant given the area's connection to the Cooper search zone.
Well,
Called the authorities.
and it was.
As the ransom money. The FBI confirmed the serial numbers matched. About $5,800 in total. Found almost 9 years later.
Wow. But Tina Bar wasn't kind of the wrong place,
Well,
geographically.
Exactly. That was the puzzle. Tina Bar is northwest and significantly upstream from where the FBI calculated the most likely drop zone was. For river currents to take it there naturally seemed unlikely. It would have had to slow it against the flow, basically.
So how did it get there? Theories must have exploded again.
Oh, yeah. Did it wash ashore somehow during a weird flood? Did Cooper himself bury it there maybe years later? Did someone else find it and bury it? Maybe to throw people off?
Was there anything about the condition of the money?
Interesting point. One FBI agent involved later noted the rubber bands were decayed, but not completely gone, and the bundles were fairly intact. He thought it suggested the money hadn't been in the elements for the full 9 years, maybe buried more recently than 71.
Which leans towards intentional burial.
It lends some weight to that theory, yes. Deliberately placed, perhaps long after the jump itself.
But still, no more money ever found. No parachute, no briefcase.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
The Tenebar discovery was huge. It reignited interest, proved Cooper likely survives the jump with at least some cash, but ultimately it just deepened the mystery. Where was the rest? Why bury just that small amount there? More questions than answers.
We talk about the mystery, the legend, but there's a human cost to this too, isn't there, for the families of people suspected?
A huge, often overlooked cost. Imagine living for decades under that cloud of suspicion, uncertainty, public fascination. It's immense pressure.
Marla Cooper's story about her uncle LD really brings that home.
It does. Those childhood memories, the family whispers, his strange return, fueling decades of private speculation within her family. Her coming forward shows how deeply this unresolved event impacted ordinary lives.
And the FBI must have heard from lots of families over the years.
Countless letters, calls, people sharing suspicions about loved ones, often based on anecdotes, vague memories, sometimes driven by grief, sometimes just needing closure. It shows the very personal dimension of this historical puzzle.
Like Joe Weber, Dwayne Weber's widow, still convinced he was Cooper, despite the lack of hard evidence.
Her steadfast belief is powerful, isn't it? It highlights how personal conviction can exist alongside or even counter to forensic findings, especially when answers are so scarce.
And we can't forget the flight crew, the direct impact on them.
Absolutely. Tina Mucklow, who spent hours next to him. The psychological burden was reportedly immense. She largely withdrew from public life afterwards. Her silence speaks volumes about the trauma. And think of the FBI agents who spent years, careers, chasing this ghost. The weight of an unsolved case like that.
Let's go back to the jump itself, the mechanics of it. The 727's rear stairs, his flight plan, it was technically possible.
Technically survivable, yes. Highly, highly risky. But the combination of low altitude, slow speed, and that specific exit point made it theoretically possible in a way jumping from another part of the plane wouldn't have been.
And his choice of parachute, that older military style.
Also significant. It lacked a reserve chute, which most civilian jumpers would use. This suggested either specific military training with that older gear, or maybe just familiarity from some past experience. Or maybe it was all he could get hold of.
But even if technically possible, landing. That's the hard part.
Immensely hard. Landing in that terrain, dense forest, mountains, ravines at night, in a storm, with zero visibility, the chances of serious injury or death were extremely high. And the fact that no trace of a landing site, no chute, no gear was ever found. It's truly baffling.
Could he have had help? A pickup arranged? Supplies hidden?
Theoretically, yes. People have speculated about accomplices, cash supplies, but again, zero evidence. No tracks leading away, no discovered cash, nothing beyond that Tina Bar money miles away and years later. It makes those scenarios very hard to substantiate.
So the profile that emerges is just contradictory almost.
It is. Meticulous planner, yet no disguise. Calm under pressure, yet performs an incredibly risky act. Leaves almost no forensics. Executes this wild exit, and then total silence. Complete disappearance. He defies easy explanation.
When you boil it all down, what do we actually know for sure?
Very little. No confirmed fingerprints, no verified photo or ID, no known history beyond the hijacking itself, no documented ending. He really did just step off that plane and into legend.
He joins that club of enduring mysteries, doesn't he? Amelia Earhart, Jack the Ripper, people we're still talking about because we just don't know.
Exactly. The lack of a definitive answer is precisely what keeps them alive in our imagination.
And Cooper taps into something specific, that American outlaw idea.
I think so. The nonviolent rebel, polite, mannerly even, who pulls off this audacious crime against the system and vanishes perfectly. In our hyper-documented, surveilled world today, the kind of complete disappearance feels almost mythical, maybe even appealing on some level.
But the core questions just remain. Did he survive? Did he live out his life anonymously? Or did the wilderness claim him right then and there?
Stubbornly unanswered. And maybe that silence, that total disappearance in an age where everyone seems to leave a trace, is the most powerful part of the story now.
It lets the legend live, lets everyone have their own theory.
Precisely. The lack of a neat resolution keeps the story open, allows it to be retold, reinterpreted. Each generation adds its own spin to the void he left.
So the FBI case might be closed.
Officially closed, files gathering dust. But the story of the man who jumped into that storm, that resonates as strongly as ever.
We end where we began, really, with this quiet guy on a routine flight, Thanksgiving Eve, who hijacks a plane and just steps out of existence, an enduring enigma.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe the ambiguity, the fact we don't know his fate, is what makes it so compelling. It lets him remain this symbol of, what? Perfect escape, the ultimate unsolved puzzle.
Perhaps in a world that wants easy answers for everything, there's a strange kind of allure to a story that refuses to give one up, a mystery that stays a mystery.
That sky over the Pacific Northwest swallowed him whole that night in '71. But in a way, the sky is still open for D.B. Cooper. His legend is still flying, a testament to the power of the unknown.